How does a 22-year-old man end up fighting for the Army of Northern Virginia and somehow makes it all the way to Appomattox to be one of 72 surviving members of a unit from North Carolina? Today, we're going to retrace the steps of Peter Crawford Earnhardt, the very man that his survival of the American Civil War would birth a NASCAR dynasty in Dale Earnhardt and his family. We'll take you on the trail to 20th North Carolina right here in Malvern Hill. Artillery pieces like the one that's in front of me right here is what Earnhardt's facing. If you take a look at the across this vast open field, this is a farmland. It's always been a farmland out through here. And there's a paved road that runs down this area here, and it branches off. It goes off in that direction and then off in this direction here. The 20th North Carolina is coming from that tree line over there, and they're heading in this direction. They formed way off in the distance before they started making their way across this field toward the position that we're at right now. They are unsuccessful in trying to make it right here at the artillery line here at Malvern Hill in front of the West House. Now beyond that house right there, all off in the distance, Thomas J. West House, beyond the ridge line there is another farm. That farm actually has thousands of Union soldiers crammed in there in reserves waiting to come up and fight in this direction. And many of them do. For example, the 67th New York is over there. They're lined up and ready to come up into the fight. And just as the 20th North Carolina comes off the line over there, the 67th comes into the fray. Now, just a couple of days before that, there's a young lieutenant, a second lieutenant, who's a part of the 67th New York, and he's fighting off at Nelson's farm over here, and he manages to get himself into a world of hurt. And he tells a story in 1866 to another man who writes it down for him about how he was crossing a field and artillery took his calf muscle right off of his leg. That's the kind of stuff that these guys are facing out here. That very injury took that second lieutenant completely out of the fight for the rest of the American Civil War. And somehow, Peter Crawford does not end up with an injury out here on this field at Malvern Hill. So I have here on this paper in front of me now a list of the battles that the historian for the 20th North Carolina wrote down as being some of the battles that they were involved in. They were involved in 39 separate engagements, separate major engagements. That doesn't include small skirmishes or anything like that. But just to name a few: Gaines Mill, Malvern Hill, South Mountain, Antietam, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, Gettysburg, Bristow Station, Kelly's Ford, Mine Run, Wilderness, Spotsylvania, North Anna, Cold Harbor, Monocacy, 3rd Winchester, Fisher's Hill, Cedar Creek, 3rd Petersburg, Fort Stedman is included in that, Sailor's Creek, and then finally the surrender at Appomattox. And at that surrender in Appomattox, 72 men of the original 1,012 end up surrendering there. Out of the 72 men, only 9 of them were armed. They didn't have weapons. Of the 72 men, Peter Crawford Earnhardt would be one of them, without an arm. Didn't have weapons of any kind. It's a pretty amazing story if you really think about it. I can't think of any other stories really that are like that. Although I think that if you dig into history deep enough, you're probably going to find a lot of soldiers that ended up making it out of this war with very similar paths, but the vast majority of them had an injury of some sort, and it's documented. But for some reason, Peter Crawford Earnhardt, not documented at all. Now, one of the most solemn places that you could be on a battlefield is at a grave, especially if that grave had been there since the battle itself. Here in a minute, I'm going to walk up on a position where there's a small sign, a small marker, and it tells a story about a grave that was discovered out here at Malvern Hill, likely from some soldiers that fought here at the battle and was buried hastily in a small grave. Now, there's no telling who these soldiers were with, because when they were found, there wasn't much left, but they were definitely Confederate soldiers. We are in the position where D.H. Hill's men were. So, could it have been men from the 20th North Carolina? It is a possibility. These men were removed from this field, this battlefield grave, and they were buried later on in a cemetery. So their remains were interred properly to give them a proper burial, regardless of who they fought for, because that was the nice human thing to do. So we'll flip this camera around and I'll show you the divots that are in the ground from where those 2 soldiers were found. Coincidentally, I, at one point in time, ended up volunteering for a National Park Ranger that was here the day that they found these bodies. So that's the Y section back there. This is the area. Crawford's coming up, Crawford Earnhardt is heading straight up the hill there, right into the Valley of Death. And somehow he makes it out alive. Malvern Hill is one of those places where it's not glorified. People don't talk about it as much as they probably should. The struggles that happen out here with both the Union and Confederate soldiers on this field, it's just as bloody and just as crazy as the fights that happened at Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville and Gettysburg, but it doesn't receive as much attention, likely because of General McClellan in his decisions. But thankfully for this battlefield, it's been on farmland forever. And so today, you can come out here to this national park, part of the Richmond Battlefield Park system, and you can kind of step back in time. And you can be a part of this field for a second and try to learn the history and understand what happened here without all of the tour buses of Gettysburg or the silly ghost stories of Yorktown and places like that. The lantern tours and the bustling hordes of people who are on vacation to buy a t-shirt. If you're a true historian and you love this stuff, this is the place for you. Battlefields like Malvern Hill and stories like Peter Crawford Earnhardt. It's absolutely fantastic. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's the best place to be. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our story out here at Malvern Hill. I've enjoyed delivering it, and I hope you take something from these stories, something more than just a battle that happened many, many years ago. This is a story about real people, real people's lives, sons and fathers, cousins and uncles, people that mattered at one point in time. And they made the decisions that they made, and history wrote it down however it wrote it. Until next time, on another battlefield, this is History with Waffles.